Decaf. The thing I like about decaf is that I could keep drinking it and keep drinking it and keep drinking it, as opposed to caffeinated espresso, which I kind of have to stop after one. My heart can't take it anymore, but my mouth still wants it, even though it's decaf. Is that something I should probably change about myself? I'm sure there are many things that I need to change, including my pants, but I'm not going to do that right now. I've been active for the past week or so, just trying to figure out really where it is and what it is that I want to do, and where it is I might want to do it. And this is kind of like an ongoing thing, an ongoing process. And this is something that I've been wrestling with for a number of years, certainly not just over this past week. You know, back in the day, it was relatively straightforward. I could have real coffee as opposed to decaf, which is not real coffee. I mean, it is real coffee, but it's by comparison. Back in the day, in terms of connecting with other people, it was straightforward. The process wasn't intermediary, or there were no intermediaries. It wasn't intermediated. There was no middle platform. You had to effectively figure it out. You had to kind of roll your own. And those were the early days of the internet. The early days with software. That's when I really latched on to technology as a powerful set of tools to enable me to do the things that I might want to do. And that's what got me excited about technology in general. Not so much what it was, but what it could do. And it was fun and frustrating back then because, there weren't exactly processes. And I think that was probably the most thrilling part of it. There were no processes by which I needed to apply myself. So that's kind of how LockerGnome it came to be, right? It sprang out of me seeing that there was this gaping hole that existed that I felt I could fill. And for the most part, I still kind of feel that way, but there are many opportunities for us to connect with one another these days. YouTube certainly is not the only place. But what has given me pause about the idea of community again over this past week or so is in relation to what's been happening with changes at Twitter. I whether I've vocalized this or not, I don't think it's going to disappear entirely, but it is changing. I don't think there's any doubt about that. But there was the big question of like, well, where are you going to go? Because remember, community doesn't live on Twitter. Community doesn't live on Facebook. It doesn't live on YouTube. It doesn't live on any platform. You take community with you wherever you go. It's in your heart. That's a flat fact. You cannot convince me otherwise. These tools make it easier for us to connect, commiserate, to collaborate with one another. So I had been mentioning or talked about an open source project that's a part of the Fediverse, this idea of federated instances throughout the internet that can be connected or potentially disconnected from one another, and allowing you to effectively better control your identity is probably the wrong word to use in this context, but better ownership of where it is you can go to connect with other people. I feel that's probably more fair. So I'm rather bullish on what Mastodon is and what it could be. It's not perfect. Then again, what is? But then another app started to bubble up. My Star Wars, I guess, community of sorts, the people that I follow who are into Star Wars on Twitter at least, and maybe even beyond, we're all talking about this app. It's like a phone app called Hive. And if you haven't tried Hive, it's on iOS and it's on Android. It's simple, it's straightforward, it's I get the premise of it, although I don't know if I necessarily see Hive as a Twitter alternative at all. And that's something that, unfortunately, is it's something that we're going to have to deal with moving forward. Because, like it or not, when platforms change, we have to change in kind. We can't just go along thinking that the way things work today is going to be the same way things are going to work tomorrow or next year or a decade from now. It's always going to be changing. It's always going to be evolving. Always, always, always. I mean, like, take, for example, like, now Jedi is 8 years old. She just turned 8. She's in school. She's doing well. We're preparing for a Thanksgiving meal. Diana's downstairs, and getting things prepared. She loves the stuffing. I don't think that she's wrong in that feeling. The stuffing is delicious. But 8 years ago, we didn't have a kid. Now we have a kid. Life changes. Things changed. Perspectives. Now I get to tell dad jokes and get away with it. So happy to be able to do that. Because I mean, you can't really tell a dad joke unless you're a dad. I think they take away your dad license if that happens. So I know that over time these things evolve, these things change. But when social media, as a term, as the series of platforms came along, those of us who are used to independent publishing, having to roll our own, building our own communities, and relying on our own resources to get from point A to point B, suddenly those opportunities were centralized. And when that happened, the promise and the allure of it was rather thrilling. The idea that we didn't have to work so hard to connect with people was great. In the beginning, Facebook was awesome. Oh my God, I could post something and immediately just the forum feel to it, it was amazing. I mean, it was just awesome. I loved Facebook back then. And then slowly but surely over time, Facebook changed, right? Now, if you want to get a post seen, you have to pay for it. Which, if it's worth paying for, it's worth paying for. But they brought everybody in with the promise that they'd be able to better connect. Well, that's true to a certain degree. But as a creator, as someone who had catalyzed content and community off platform, if you will, it became a tremendous challenge. The same thing goes for any traditional news outlets, though I wasn't really a traditional news outlet, but more like just this independent voice, this independent presence. When it changed, we had no choice. We had to go along with it. That was it. That's the way Facebook was going to be. That's it. That's it. That's what it was. So Twitter for the longest time was great. It was fine. Then they started changing things. Then the algorithm came along. Now, as a creator, putting something out there, you get lucky if someone sees your stuff. Like every so often I'll get, comments on YouTube, even though I've, published regularly, done things regularly, maybe not as regularly as others. I was never a YouTuber. I'm not great at it. Great at talking, great at doing live videos, certainly. I feel I'm okay at doing shorts. I'm having fun doing shorts, certainly. Because I'm like, well, what kind of video would I like to do? I think shorts and live video are probably where I kind of sit. But they'll say, Chris, I haven't seen you forever. Chris, I thought, you were gone. I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm still there. So algorithmic social media has been honestly kind of soul crushing for maybe not everybody, but certainly for a lot of people who had an independence before social media came along. And I was one of them, part of the old guard, if you will. So when I see, when I see opportunity in something like Mastodon, even to a certain degree, because they're promoting Hive as a non-algorithmic experience, and hopefully they don't go back on that, to me, that is a better community experience, because community is anathema to an algorithm. Or you can even say vice versa. An algorithm is anathema to community. The chance to connect with each other. I mean, sharing something out there is one thing, but it's David Spinks ended up sharing something today that really spoke to it. Like, community doesn't live in the posts; it lives in the replies. And that to me is where I'm finding a very deep value in Mastodon as a part of the greater Fediverse, to the point where I'm like, how could I bring LockerGnome back? And I barely covered this last time I was talking, and I realize this is probably the worst time to talk, the day before Thanksgiving, here in America if you celebrate it. But the way that it works is, it's very compelling. It's just so compelling. Like, oh my God, if LockerGnome could exist as an independent instance connected with the greater Fediverse in Mastodon, suddenly people could post and share their discoveries, what they've learned, what they, being geeks and nerds together. That was what LockerGnome basically was. Tech, yeah, but pop culture for sure. Star Wars, can't avoid that topic with me around. And I felt like when I started to get into it, I was like, yeah, I feel that LockerGnome could very well have its place as a Mastodon instance, and inviting people to rejoin LockerGnome if they were trying to figure out, like, what is this? I don't understand the Mastodon. I don't understand this. Well, people remember what LockerGnome was. They remember the forums. Some of them do. Some of them remember when I tried to do LockerGnome.net on OSQA. That didn't pan out because the hosting costs were too high. That's what stopped. That's why I stopped. You can't afford it. Social media basically destroyed a lot of that. Not for everybody. Not for those who had a tighter business model. But the challenge even in launching something like that is there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. In order to do something like bringing LockerGnome back on as an instance running Mastodon as a part of the Fediverse, and if you have no idea what I'm talking about, I'm not sure if you're quite as tuned into the geekiness of this talk. It's very geeky. That is a very technical. What I just said is highly technical. Very technical. So if you're into tech, follow the bouncy ball. Mastodon is an open source project. Works a lot like Twitter. It's a project that uses ActivityPub as a foundation to better connect with other Mastodon instances and in the greater sphere of the Fediverse, because you could have like a video site that's also connected to a blogging site that's also connected to a photo hosting site that's a part of the Fediverse, where you are effectively federated. You don't necessarily have to exist to connect with community on any one private platform or a publicly traded platform. And not that there's anything wrong with those platforms. I still use Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, YouTube, clearly, Twitch. I still use them. There's a benefit to using them. You get to connect with people that you otherwise it'd be difficult to connect with. But a lot of people, when I started being active on Mastodon, and I'm currently a week in, 2 weeks, I don't know. I've lost count as to when I signed up. And just a few days ago, but I'm almost at 3,000 followers on Mastodon, and I would say most of those people have no idea who I am. Most of them have no idea what I've done, where I've been. And that's fine. I like connecting, with people like that. It gives me a chance to branch out, to connect with people that otherwise I wouldn't have connected with. But for those of us, who might remember what it was like in the days gone by, there's that value of taking that project and figuring out, all right, well, then I can carve out my permanent place on the Fediverse and basically say LockerGnome.com exists again. Or LockerGnome, for the lack of a better anything, LockerGnome exists again. The big question I have is whether or not it is worth doing on a grander scale, and people who would want to join would basically join by way of because instances aren't free. They cost real money, and they're not very easily, I should say, ad supported. So ad models are going away. That's the thing about Mastodon. There's no ads, no tracking, no anything like that. And there's that's okay. I have no problem with that. No algorithm. That's awesome. So then I'd have to figure out, well, what is the model? And the only sustainable model that I can think of, once I know the cost structure for it, is effectively basically doing it on a subscription basis, and then just keeping it as organic as possible. And I don't know what, I don't have an answer to all those questions because it would definitely take a lot more than what I currently have. Oh, what does it cost, Aaron? It costs as much as data as you transmit, which, if you might be a popular user, could be a lot. If you get a lot of people coming in, it could be a lot. And certainly knowing what, I guess what the average, or I guess your baseline is, wouldn't even know that until something was actually up and running. So I don't have an answer to a lot of those questions, unfortunately. So Andy says, not a big Twitter user, don't know what these changes are. Guess whatever they are, they came into place. Yes, with the guy. Let's just say the guy. Twitter needed to change. Is this what needed to change at Twitter? I don't know. Is he making the right decisions? Doesn't seem like it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that on the other end of it, it's going to be worse. But it also doesn't mean that on the other end of it, it's going to be better. So I'm in between. I'm in the middle. I'm hedging my bets. I've got my plan B. My plan B is connecting with people independent of one single platform. That is, part of what has had me just, again, thinking and iterating and considering what works, what would work for me, where I would fit. Because I honestly, with social media, I don't even know where I fit in anymore. I have too many interests. 3D printing, Star Wars, pop culture, entertainment, technology, new websites that you find that are pretty awesome. I've got the Substack email newsletter went out, and I had a whole long thing about community in it on my Substack, because I moved out of review because I'm not sure of its future, and I moved back to Substack. But this next week, I have a feeling there are going to be it's basically going to be, here are some awesome websites that I found over the past week. And then linking to all of them, because I don't have much else that I can share. There hasn't been much that I've been able to do this past week for a lot of different reasons. So anyway, that's where my head's been with respect to social media, with respect to community, with respect to LockerGnome. I have to get a few more questions answered before anything happens. And if anything, what I would likely do is start LockerGnome out as a like self-hosted, like just me, and then slowly but surely say, all right, well, we can add users, but it's going to be, we need you to pledge this much once I know costs. Because if I can't measure costs effectively, it would basically crumble, and I wouldn't be able to maintain it. Because I've seen too many people who are getting funding, getting hit with money, bills that are hard to cover because the people who have joined their instances aren't helping. So in order for a LockerGnome to be viable without ads, or tracking or any of that stuff, it would need to be crowd supported. So yeah, a lot of these changes have taken place because here what had happened effectively, my social graph, the people that I follow, changed. They've either left or they've diminished their presence on Twitter, making it less interesting. Twitter's not interesting because it's Twitter. Twitter's interesting because of where you go to connect with other people. It's the people that make it interesting. When those people are no longer there, suddenly it's less interesting. And then you have to ask, well, where'd those people go? Well, a lot of my Star Wars community went off to Hive. So subsequently, I don't follow everybody on Hive. And in fact, I may even scale back from the people I am following. I only want to see on Hive and Instagram and Facebook, I only want to see Star Wars stuff. I don't want like personal status updates. Twitter's where I go for the fire hose, right? That's news and updates and all that. That's Twitter. That's just the way I like it. I'm posting to Tumblr, but even though Tumblr is going to be supporting ActivityPub, I'm not sure if that's where people are going to go. It's got a different feel, a different vibe than Twitter does, certainly. Mastodon has satisfied that itch that I've had, that the ongoing news river. that I'm used to following on Twitter. So I can live without Twitter because my people have gone, a lot of them, not every one of them, have gone elsewhere. And maybe that will continue. I don't know. There have been some changes that have taken place that I think are really disappointing to see. And some changes that have taken place that honestly have been long overdue in relation to Twitter. I'm not saying that, it's, they did this, so therefore it evens out that. It's not like, one thing negates another. It's just that change is coming and change is happening. And I don't know what that means for me. I don't know what it means for the people that I want to connect with. But it just got me thinking over and over again about that spirit of community and where I like going to connect with people and where I need to go to connect with people. And Twitter is becoming less and less that place. I'll say it. And Twitter has been basically my home for years. It's where I go. It's my go-to. But I'm stepping back because I'm seeing a lot of other people that I follow step back. Not every one of them. I'm not saying quit. I don't think that's a great idea. At least right now. I can see who's paying to be verified. Browser extensions are pretty awesome. Like, oh, really? Well, that's kind of okay. So everyone's got to make their own decisions. Maybe at some point I'll see a value in it too, but it just depends. Change sometimes can be good. Change sometimes could be not so good. And as someone who used to be independent, putting my destination in the hands of other people, putting my success in the hands of other people is precarious. Precarious. Always has been and always will be. And so that's where, even if as I'm talking about, if you hear the little click sound effects going on in the background, those are all my Mastodon notifications going off, people basically boosting my posts or favoriting them. Like, I get a lot of activity on Mastodon. A lot. Like, a lot. And I'm happy to, I love it because I can just post and not have to worry about algorithms. So I post a whole bunch of fun stuff. You don't even have to use Mastodon to really benefit from it either, because you can also subscribe to a user's RSS feed. Mastodon accounts generate RSS feeds. So you can subscribe to someone's RSS feed without actually joining Mastodon. So if you enjoy what someone does, you should subscribe to their RSS feed. Like, you can even subscribe. I think Substack also generates RSS. I think they do. Pretty sure they might not. But anyway, I have been I've been mentioning that recently, the subscribing to RSS. If you don't remember RSS, that was the last technology I feel I really got excited about. Like, RSS was just so exciting because just the idea that it was just so easy to subscribe to people's feeds. It checked all the boxes. Well, RSS is still around. So you don't even have to use Mastodon to subscribe to my feed in whatever feed reader you use on whatever platforms. People still use feed readers. It's a great way of staying up to date, so long as someone is generating an RSS feed. Twitter used to have RSS feeds for users, but they killed them. I don't think they're coming back for Twitter, certainly. I don't think for big media it's not coming back, because they basically, Google Reader basically destroyed RSS. It came along, everyone used it, then they killed it, then everyone stopped using RSS. Stopped using it. It was no longer a thing, which was disappointing. Yeah, but maybe the pendulum's swinging back the other direction. Like I said, I got to ask a lot more questions as far as the hosting a Mastodon instance is concerned. Just to make sure that I understand what needs to be put in place before doing it, including legal stuff, like, making sure you're compliant with all the laws, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm not even sure if it's something that I could do with any degree of immediacy. as much as I would love to. There's a lot of T's to cross and I's to dot. You know, you have to get insurance. You'd have to, and that costs, everything costs money. It may be free to you, but someone's paying the bill. But you know, the upside to it is knowing that I could basically have my place on the internet that I have not felt like I've had since, God, almost a decade ago. Almost. Because of the nature of social media and how it changed and how it evolved. So I got a lot more thinking to do, a lot more researching to do. I'm gonna give it a bit more time before I'm able to kind of pull the trigger on something. Certainly knowing full well whether or not people would be, you know, down for something like that. If they would join a LockerGnome instance. If they would join LockerGnome. And in order, I think that the way that would work is specifically on a Patreon campaign. And then the cool thing, what we could do with it is effectively, this is the path back, right? The path back to what's the LockerGnome daily report. Well, remember when we did that? Well, imagine we've got a network that we control. We see trends. We see what people are sharing. We can see the most popular links of the day on network, or the popular things of the day, and pull them up on screen and effectively do a live broadcast. All right, today, all right, what was popular on LockerGnome? Oh, this was, oh, that was, oh, this was, oh, that was. And suddenly, that's how I feel like the video and the YouTube kind of dovetail with that, the idea of what LockerGnome was, right? So, like I said, I've got to answer a few more questions. But I'm excited to be able to talk about that, to rekindle, you know, what it meant for a lot of people, even on Mastodon. People say, "Oh my God, LockerGnome! I remember LockerGnome from way back in the, oh my God, LockerGnome!" It's great to reconnect with those people. That's kind of one of those things that kind of gets me wondering. I'm like, well, what if? What if? What are the check boxes that I need to compliance, for one. That's the thing that really gets me nervous. Compliance. Are people going to be interested? Would people support? Would people join? I'm not saying, hey, join Mastodon. It would be running Mastodon. I'm saying, hey, join LockerGnome if you consider yourself a nerd or a geek and you wanted to connect with other people. I feel there could be a place for LockerGnome in all that. I really genuinely do. And of course, if that were to happen, moderators, you gotta find moderators. It's not because you never know what's going to happen, which direction something's going to go. These are things that you need to understand when it comes to running any kind of online sub-community or website where people interact with each other. You got to think about how people are going to go sideways. So long as you've got a clear set of rules, conditions, explanations, you've got a track record, all that, then I feel that there's the prospect is high to make something like that work. And so I'm looking. I'm thinking and would certainly welcome any kind of feedback. And I'm, like I said, I'm on Mastodon, still across all the socials, but I feel that the defederation is that pendulum is definitely swinging, and there's been enough. I feel of a tipping point where Mastodon just feels like it's solid. It is. There's enough people there that there's momentum, and it's only going to get bigger because it's got more attention being paid to it. And the hope is that with it could return the voice of the independent web, pre-centralized social media. In the way that it would work, the way that would work would specifically be funded by the people using it. Not funded by advertisers, funded by the people that wanted to use it, That would be kind of that I believe would be the crux of what the LockerGnome 2.0 would be. So that's my those have been my thoughts on community and Twitter and where my Star Wars people are. And that's not just Star Wars. I'm seeing like celebrities have been joining over there. It's kind of incredible. Oh, my new Midjourney's up. I subscribed to Midjourney, and I love I did a blueprint of Chris Pirillo, and like, so this is what it's got me as. Like, this is how you build a Chris. This is the blueprint for Chris Pirillo right there. Allegedly. Do I want to? Let's try a variant of 3. Actually, a variant of 2. How about line art? Oh. Variant of 2. Do you guys use Midjourney? I love Midjourney. I am addicted to generating AI art. I even did this one. This one was kind of fun. It's a blueprint of Chris Pirillo here. I'm sorry, it's a little dim, but I'll be sharing this in social. Like, if you ever wanted to build your own Chris Pirillo, here's the blueprint. Here are the instructions. Keep it simple. Yeah, Matthew. Totally understand that. Hey, Astroprinter, good to see you. Keeping it simple is key. And that's where I want to have that value prospect nailed. Because Mastodon onboarding, for those who aren't familiar, can be a little confusing. I feel that if it were LockerGnome, people wouldn't see it as Mastodon. They would just see it as it is LockerGnome. And they'd have the opportunity to join. I would basically make it available. I wish there was a way to synchronize it like with Patreon. Like, there's no direct way of doing that, though. There's no API by which only if you're a Patreon sub can your account be active. So that would be manual, but it would largely be afforded by those who would join a Patreon campaign, because that's the way people do things anymore. They just do Patreon. Like, they know Patreon. Okay, fine. We'll just rebuild that. We'll do a LockerGnome one. But yeah, I'd like to do a Mastodon instance for it. There was talk about doing one for MakerDeck too. That may be a bit of a heavier lift. I don't know about doing that yet. I haven't seen a lot of interest from the 3D printing space in something like it. And there's already like a 3D printing instance out there too. So the last thing I'd want to do is like step on somebody else's toes. But yeah, that's anyway. Okay, that's everything I wanted to talk about today. Community and Twitter and where LockerGnome fits into all that, and to tell everybody, I hope you have a good Thanksgiving. I'm not doing much except for eating. That's it. That's my only plans for Thanksgiving are to eat, which I feel is a good plan. Not a lot of questions came in today, but quite all right. Thank you for hanging. I love you. I appreciate you. And at this point, I'm going to leave you to your own devices and